Bam! It's about tiny changes creating remarkable results. Today, we are diving into part 1 of Atomic Habits. I like the summary that they wrote here. It is like, no matter your goals, Atomic Habits offers a proven framework for improving every day, every single day. James Clear, one of the world's leading experts on habit formation, reveals practical strategies that help teach you exactly how to form good habits, break bad ones, and master the tiny behaviors that lead to remarkable results. I remember the first time I read this book was a game changer, and every single time that I've read it, I kind of feel like it's like I'm looking at it through a different set of eyes. And today we are diving into part 1 in our book club. Want to welcome you here to the call. This is Modern Leadership, where we believe you do not need to sacrifice an area of your life to have massive success in business. You can excel at it all. We want to show you how.
It's time to redefine leadership. Welcome to Modern Leadership, where we see things differently. Our channel is all about empowering entrepreneurs like you to achieve the next level of success in business and life. We believe that you can create a massive impact in the world without compromising your personal life or family time to do so.
We're committed to providing you with actionable tips and strategies weekly to make that possible. So if you're ready to become a modern leader and make a lasting difference in the world, consider subscribing. Turn on notifications and dive into our community. We want to thank you for being here because the world needs your leadership now more than ever. Let's go.
Let's go. I love it when she says that. Okay, guys, so what we're going to do is we're going to dive into starting on chapter number 1. By the way, if you're new here, super pumped to have you here with us. We have a business book club. Right now, it's completely free. If you go to modernleadership.us/book club, you can get all access to everything that we're going to be talking about here today. We've gone through several books, including Master Your Life Through Self-Coaching, The Power of One More. We've hit on a couple other different really powerful books by Brene Brown, like so many different powerful books that we read as a team and do these live streams so that we can pull out the nuggets that need to like be connected not only to our subconscious mind, but to get us to be like really help us fuel not only the ability of excelling in multiple different areas of our life, but making the impact that we truly want to make. And today we're diving into chapter number 1. So if you're new here and if you're returning, you know that I don't read it page by page, but what I do is I highlight very specific things that call out to me. And I want to share them with you here. Now, as we go, I would definitely love to hear you along the way. In terms of like what spoke loudest to you in this book. And it really is this powerful when it comes to like tiny changes actually do create remarkable results. For me personally, the tiny changes helped me lose 100 pounds. For me personally, the tiny changes helped me build a business that I could not only substantially, trump my current income being an LAPD sergeant and my wife being at UCLA Medical Center, but allowed me to create a life of time and money freedom. And I would not have been, none of that would have been possible if I hadn't really picked up books like this, which was like figuring out that it's not the big things that make the difference. It's not doing 75 workouts a day. It's doing one workout for 75 days. And when you realize it's those small things that can help develop you into an entirely different person, that's literally what happened in my life. And I constantly see it again and again because there's new struggles, there's new challenges that I'm facing, and there's new things that I want to improve. And when I can make it down into bite-sized chunks, it changes the game forever. Not only because it makes it feel easier, but it's the truth of how changes happen. Now we're going to go into part number 1, which is the introduction, his story. By the way, you should read his story. It is so freaking powerful. The thing that stuck out to me, had to do with like a baseball injury that he had. And he said, I wasn't going to be starting on the baseball team anytime soon, so I focused on getting my life better. This is the reason why I learned habits. While my peers stayed up late and played video games, I built good sleep habits and went to bed early each night. In the messy world of college dorm, I made a point to keep my room tidy and neat. These improvements were minor, but they gave me a sense of control over my life. I started to feel confident again. And this growing belief in myself rippled into the classroom as I improved my study habits and managed to earn straight A's during my first year. This is one thing that I always love to talk about on Modern Leadership because as modern leaders, we see things differently. When everybody's zigging, we're zagging. When everybody's waiting for January 1st to start on their goals, we're starting right now. And we're doing things that not the normal public are willing to do. And that's because we're leaders, because we're entrepreneurs, because we help people going through struggles and problems. And it doesn't mean we're immune to it too, but we see things differently. And it's so powerful when he took this whole idea of like, listen, I'm going to do the opposite of what everybody else does. I'm going to build up tiny habits. And what I didn't realize when I first started this is every single time you take a small habit and you take an action towards it, it's like a checkbox in the column of self-confidence. And as you continue to put those checkboxes in there, it helps you build self-confidence so you can do bigger and more, like even more impactful things over a longer period of time. Not huge things, but things that really do compound. And when you start off with those small things, believe it or not, they will help you build that self-confidence to get you to keep doing it. He says, 6 years after I've been hit in the face with a baseball bat, flown to the hospital and placed into a coma, I was selected as the top male athlete in Denison University and named to the ESPN Academic All-American team, an honor given to just 33 players across the entire country. By the time I graduated, I was listed at the school record books in 8 different categories. That same year, I was awarded the university's highest academic honor, the Presidential Medal. He says, we all face challenges in life. This injury was one of mine, and the experience taught me a critical lesson. The changes that seem small and unimportant at first will compound into remarkable results if you're willing to stick with them for years. Now, as I say that out loud, even like having this thought of having to stick with something for years could very easily make me feel like, oh my gosh, like this is going to take too long. Like I want results right now. Like, am I willing to, I don't even know if I'm willing to do this. And the power of one more kind of comes back into my head. It's like, I don't need to do this for the rest of my life. I just need to do this for one more day. What if I just perform this habit one more time? And then when I get to the next one, maybe I can make a decision to do it one more time. But sometimes we think about all the decisions we have to make over the next year, and it can feel overloaded and overwhelming. But what if we just had to do it one more time, right? And when we think about that, I don't know about you guys, but I'm planning on living like for longer than a year, right? Many, many, many years. So if I find a habit that actually helps pour into me, helps me take care of myself, helps me make a bigger impact out in the world when it comes to like coaching entrepreneurs, but also like helps me to create deeper connections with my kids and make my health a priority, I'm like, why wouldn't I not want to do that for the rest of my life? And it's just a simple reframe, a little shift in the mindset that really helped me to get back on track, because it's very easy for my brain to convince me not to take those actions. And it still tries to do that every single day. It tries to get me to react or be angry or get frustrated. But being able to now see and coach myself and think about things a little bit differently has been a true game changer for me. And I know it has been, most likely has been for you too. Okay. So chapter number 1 is the surprising power of habits. He says, too often we convince ourselves that massive success requires massive action. He's like, meanwhile, improving by 1% isn't particularly notable. Sometimes it's not even noticeable, but it can be far more meaningful, especially in the long run. The difference in tiny improvement can make over time is astounding. He says habits are the compound interest of self-improvement. The same way that money multiplies through compound interest, the effects of your habits multiply as you repeat them. And he has like a little graph here, not sure if you can see it, where it kind of like shows you what happens when you decline, and when you get 1% better every single day. And I like the way he described it. He's like, 1% better means like, did you eat a salad today versus a hamburger? Did you choose water or a Coke? Like, did you decide to take the elevator or take the escalator or the stairs? Like, it's not a huge deal, but over time, it most definitely will be. I can kind of tell you that, just like I'm experiencing that again with my steps, right? I don't know why I do this in my watch, but because of the move goal. And that is like, I'm doing the 75 hard with a lot of the people inside of our book club. And when we're there, and when I'm going out to do 45-minute workouts, even though it's like raining sideways, still doing that 45 minutes extra of a walk, and then looking at the total week, how many extra calories I burn from doing that is like, wow, this is tremendous. Can I only think about like what it's like 75 days later? It's like those small habits that you take, that you decide to take more action in terms of like walking up the stairs versus going the elevator. It doesn't seem to make a difference today. But 20 calories plus 20 calories plus 20 calories plus for a long, long time. And the beauty of this is it's not just that. What also happens is you start to find other opportunities outside of that where you will burn more calories. You will walk more. And it's crazy how those things compound, because once you do something and it feels good and you're motivated by it, you will go out and you will find more opportunities to do that. It's crazy how habits work that way. He says, making a choice to get 1% better or 1% worse seems insignificant in the moment. But over the span of a lifetime, these choices determine the difference between who you are and who you could be. That one was really powerful. Okay, what progress really looks like. This is the most beautiful analogy I've ever heard. And I'm going to read it to you guys. He says, imagine that you're an ice cube. You have an ice cube sitting on the table in front of you. The room is cold and you can see your breath. It is currently 25 degrees. Ever so slightly, the room begins to heat up. 26, 27 degrees, 28. The ice cube is still sitting on the table in front of you, unchanged. 29 degrees, 30, 31, still nothing happens. Then 32 degrees hits and the ice begins to melt. A 1 degree shift, seemingly no different from the temperature increase before it, has unlocked a huge change. I remember hearing him, James Clear, live, and he was describing that, and he said, let me ask you this. Was it the last degree that changed that ice cube from ice to water? Or was it all the degree shifts leading up to that made it happen? And that was a huge eye-opener to me, because I'm like, sometimes we're taking those little steps. We're taking those little steps in business. We're posting up on social media. We're communicating with people. We're asking people questions. We're like trying to get out of our W-2. We're like taking little steps every single day. And we're like, when is this going to happen? And what if you just thought about this being the shift from 32 to 31 degrees? Just that little shift. And it's not just that last thing you did, which a lot of people tend to go like, what was that thing that like really changed the game for you? It's all the small things that happened on the way to get there. Like when I think about this in my life, how this actually played out, it was working in my business while I was working full-time as an LAPD sergeant, trying to get my business up to the point where I could leave full-time. I was being pulled in a million different directions. I had a lot of stress going on. I ended up developing an autoimmune because of the stress that was happening at LAPD. I wanted to spend more time with my family, trying to figure this all out. And at the time I was learning as much as I possibly could. I was learning about Facebook ads. I was learning about like different strategies on marketing. I was learning how to make sales. I was learning how to like do graphics. I was learning how to put together a website. I was learning how to do a podcast. I'm learning how to do YouTube. And I was like learning all of these different things, and nothing seemed to make a difference until I learned a skill called life coaching. And when I learned that skill, it unlocked everything for me, but it wasn't that skill that unlocked it. That was the temperature from 32 to 31, or from 31 to 32. Everything else that I had learned up to that time made me the type of person that not only could I use the skill of life coaching, but I could actually exponentially use all of those other skills to help me elevate my business to get to the point where I like quadrupled the income that I was making at LAPD and was able to leave. And so it's crazy because like that was a long time. For me, it took me 7 years to be able to do that in business. I don't want that for you guys. It's literally the reason why I made this channel, because I don't want you to have to go through that. But it was 7 years worth of that. And was it worth it to me? Heck yeah, it is, because I get to be at home with my family, do these incredible live streams with you guys here, with our book club, and all the different videos and stuff that we do here. And I would not be able to do this, especially like during the holidays, because I'd be at work if that was the case. And it was all of that was compounded by those small little skills that I learned over time. That's what made me think of this, what progress really looks like. Now, to be honest, I still have like goals that I want to achieve, and it feels like my brain tries to convince me that it's a lot. It's going to take a lot of action. It's going to take a lot of things to do. But in reality, when I reverse engineer it into the small actions and habits that it will take just to get there, it's so much more manageable that way. And it gets me to stay more committed long-term to get the results that I truly want. So such a powerful part. All right. Now, he's talking about goals versus systems. He talks about like why goals, so how some people set goals is not how the right way to set goals. Now here, I have to say this, and that is like for people who are part of our book club, for people who are inside of our private app, I actually have a session that I'm putting together for the 30th, which is of December, for people who are looking to not only create massive success in 2024 in their business, but also feel more connected with their family by creating powerful goals that we can plug into our subconscious mind and have them work on autopilot. Meaning, it's so awesome when you get to sit down and explore what your goals are, but like having that to do that consciously every single day takes a lot of extra time and energy. So what I'm doing is, for free, if you're a part of the book club, you actually get access to this goal training session, which is typically what I only do for my one-on-one paying clients, in order to help guide them through the process of not only picking a goal, but figuring out what those habits are for them to take action on and how to program them into your mind so you don't even have to think about it. So if you're somebody who wants to make sure you set goals right, because I set them incorrectly for so long, definitely join. If you're not a part of the book club already, definitely join. I'll leave you the link inside of the description, but if you're in the book club, click on the event button and there's a way for you to sign up to get access to that for free, okay? All right, so he says problem number 2, this is one that actually stuck out to me. He's like, achieving a goal is only a momentary change. He says, imagine you have a messy room and you set a goal to clean it. If you summon the energy to tidy up, and then you'll have a clean room for now. But if you maintain the same sloppy pack rat habits that led to the messy room in the first place, soon you'll be looking at a new pile of clutter and hoping for another burst of motivation. You're left chasing the same outcome because you've never changed the system behind it. You treated a symptom without addressing the cause. See this happening a lot with goal setting is like, once you get there, you're going to be able to have it. It's going to be so awesome, but it's not getting the goal. It's the system. It's the processes that you put in place to make it so that when you get to that point, you've just become an entirely different person and you're taking on the actions of what the type of person is who has that goal already. So not only do you get it and keep it, but you don't like have to go back and restart it over and over again. Like this is why this book helped me when it comes to my health transformation, is because I was losing the same 20 or 30 pounds over and over and over again, and then gaining it, losing it and gaining it and losing it. And it's because I didn't become something in the process. I was constantly thinking about what are the actions that I need to take and doing things in an unhealthy way and really focusing on, I want this outside goal. And when I hit that goal, I would go back into my normal habits because I hadn't developed the habits of a type of person who was 100 pounds less than I was at the time. And by thinking about that and reverse engineering it and figuring out what we're going to share in the goal setting session on the 30th, I realized that I can plant things in here that makes me become something else entirely different, whether it's a belief system, a habit system, all of these different things work in synergy. So I don't even have to think about it. I just become that type of person already, right? And when you can do that, because you have done that in areas of your life, but when you can see how to do that when it comes to your business, when it comes to connecting with your family, when it comes to your physical and mental health, like it's a game changer because you don't have to think about it all the time. It could just be pre-programmed in there. He says, you do not rise to the level of your goals. You fall to the level of your system. So if you have a goal that you have right now, you have something you want to be able to achieve, you don't rise to the level of your goals. You fall to the level of your system, which is why both of those are super important. Not only setting a goal a certain way that most of the world doesn't set, but also like putting habits in a system in place to make it so that you do those things on autopilot. Okay, chapter number 2, how your habits shape your identity. He says, many people begin the process of changing their habits by focusing on what they want to achieve. That was me. This leads us to outcome-based habits. The alternative is to build identity-based habits. With this approach, we start focusing on who we wish to become. He says, imagine 2 people resisting a cigarette. When offered to smoke, the first person says, no thanks, I'm trying to quit. It sounds like a reasonable response, but this person still believes that they're a smoker who is trying to do something else. They are hoping their behavior will change while carrying around the same beliefs. But the second person declines by saying, no thanks, I'm not a smoker. It's a small difference, but the statement signals a shift in their identity. Smoking was a part of their former life, not their current one. They no longer identify as someone who smokes. Such a powerful thing when you attack it on a identity level and you really like hack into what we talk about is like our subconscious mind, what we're thinking about on autopilot, and make it be like, you know what, I'm just not a smoker, right? I'm just not a drinker versus I'm trying to cut back or I'm trying to not do something, right? It's like somewhere in there, basically, if you look at the root of that, the root is this is what I am, and you're kind of labeling yourself. It's a very easy thing to do, but just that little switch is a game changer. He says the ultimate form of intrinsic motivation is when a habit becomes a part of your identity. It's one thing to say, I'm the type of person who wants this. It's a very different thing to say, I'm the type of person who is this. Whew, that one is crazy. He says, let me give you some examples. The goal is not to read a book. The goal is to become a reader. The goal is not to run a marathon. The goal is to become a runner. The goal is not to learn an instrument. The goal is to become a musician. It's crazy. He says your behaviors are usually a reflection of your identity, because if you understand life coaching, you understand that belief is what drives behavior. And what you believe about yourself will drive all the behavior in the world, whether it's positive, the habits that serve you. I don't want to say positive, the habits that serve you or the habits that don't serve you. It's just as simple as that. It's not as easy as flipping a switch, but when you understand how the belief system works, you can reprogram it, which is a video that I have coming out next Monday. It's like how to reprogram your brain for positive thinking, because when we understand how the brain works, we can get in there, we can find the ways to make it easier, not only to perform habits, but easier for us to go down our heart voice, or more towards like our positivity, like the things that we want to create rather than running from the things that we don't want, right? Okay. Next chapter, chapter number 3, how to build habits in 4 simple steps. He says, a habit is a behavior that has been repeated enough times to become automatic. He talks about this being a feedback loop. He says there's a feedback loop behind all human behavior. You try, you fail, you learn, and you try differently. With practice, the useless movements fade away and the useful actions get reinforced. That's habit forming. So you practice or you try, you fail, and you learn. I mean, that's like my whole life. And I still feel like I do that every single day. And a lot of failures leads to a lot of learning if you're willing to like learn from it, right? He says our habits are created, the level of activity in the brain decreases. You learn to lock in the cues that predict success and tune everything else out. This is another thing we're talking about on our goal setting session on the 30th. When you get really good at this, you start on automatic taking the actions, having the belief, feeling like somebody who already has those goals, and you will just automatically do it without even having to think about it. The reason why habits are so awesome is because when you start doing it, you get to the point where it just happens automatically. It's kind of like brushing your teeth. Like if we had problems with brushing our teeth, we probably would struggle with things, right? But we've gotten so good at brushing our teeth, it just happens automatically. For me, now what happens automatically is working out. So after the morning, I come downstairs, I go through a little bit of my routine, I read my personal development book, I snap a picture, post it up and for you guys inside of the app. I say like 3 or 4 things that I'm thankful for that are different from the day before. Like I go through this process and then I go work out. It's not if I'm going to work out. It's like, no, I'm going to work out today. It's just, that's how it's hardwired in. But that wasn't what my life was like for 30 years. Before I actually really got in there and understood how to plant like a habit and a positive belief in there. Like I was the type of person who didn't exercise and I had to convince myself every single day. You know what's hard about having to convince yourself to take action every single day is eventually that motivation will like leave. And that's why like being able to identify these cues, but also being able to like learn how to develop these habits as quickly as possible is so beneficial because you won't have to think about it anymore. It'll happen on autopilot. He says there's 4, the science of how habit works. It breaks down into 4 fundamental parts. First is the cue. The cue triggers your brain to initiate a behavior. Okay. Now that cue initiates the behavior. He says, and sometimes it's a physical cue, sometimes it's internal cue. But he says the cue will lead to a craving. Cravings are the second step, and they are the motivation behind every habit. Like, what is this thing going to get me? And it could be things that it's trying to get you things that are in your favor, and sometimes it's getting you things that are not in your favor, but it's there always to get you something. It says cues are meaningless until they are interpreted. The thoughts, feelings, and emotions of the observer are what transform a cue into a craving. So when you see football game and you sit down on the couch and you naturally are now craving a pretzel or peanuts, I don't know. I don't know. For me, it used to be wings. Like whenever you sit down, that's your cue, and then you automatically start craving this feeling of what it's going to taste like, or what it's going to feel like, or what it's going to be like to not have to do anything, or whatever it is you're trying or you have that craving for, right? But that's how the cue leads to the craving. It says the third step is the response. The response is the actual habit you perform, which can take the form of a thought or an action. And finally, the response delivers a reward. Rewards are at the end of every single habit. It says if a behavior is insufficient in any 4 of these stages, it will not become a habit. Eliminate the cue and your habit will never start. Reduce the craving and you won't experience any motivation to act. Make the behavior difficult and you won't be able to do it. And if the reward fails to satisfy your desire, then you'll have no reason to do it again in the future. Without the first 3 steps, a behavior will not occur. Without all 4, a behavior will not be repeated. And this is the feedback loop, all right? So he says, in summary, the cue triggers a craving, which motivates a response, which provides a reward, which satisfies the craving, and ultimately you want to do that cue again. And it's this circle over and over and over again. Let me give you an example here. He says, the cue, your phone buzzes with a new text message. What's the craving? I'm like, I need to answer that, right? I need to see what it is they're saying. The craving is you want to learn the content of the message. What's the response? What do you typically do when you crave to see what the content is, right? You actually grab your phone and you read it. What's the reward? Well, you satisfy your craving to read the message. Grabbing your phone becomes associated with your phone buzzing. So now you automatically do it. The next time you buzz, you take a look at it. The next time you buzz, you take a look at it. And what's crazy is that some of those times when you take it and you look at it and it's a positive message, you like feel all good. And some of those times you pick it up and you look at it and it's a negative message and you don't feel so good. And it's like those things, now you're like, oh, well, is it going to be a good message? Is it going to be a bad one? And you don't realize it, but that can obviously quickly take over and lead to bad habits of always answering your phone rather than being physically present with your kids, or rather than being like, working your business in that moment. You're now being run by a habit that is your phone and it's buzzing, right? So that's a perfect example of how that cue is. So what do? Well, what if you put your phone on Do Not Disturb? Thank God I did that today, by the way. Otherwise, I've been a hypocrite. I literally, every time I come on a call, I forget. And then like 42 messages, bing and beep, right? And it's now my indication of like, hey, you need to put that on like Do Not Disturb. What happens if you put on Do Not Disturb? Well, I don't have a craving. I don't have a craving to pick it up. And that craving, like I don't grab it and I look at it, right? Because I'm like, oh, like my brain is like, oh, nobody must have messaged me, right? It kind of like forgets that I put it on Do Not Disturb. And I'm allowed to be more present here for you guys on this call. It's a game changer when you're able to do that and see how you can remove those things that you don't want to continue to perform. Which gets me on to chapter number 4. By the way, I haven't gotten any feedback yet. Laura, what is going on? Yes, Laura, super powerful. She says, so glad I got the info from Teresa on joining live because I couldn't find it. Oh, glad she was able to do that. Okay, chapter number 4, by the way, anybody so far, what has been your biggest takeaway from this so far? So chapter number 1 was, of course, he had a little bit of his introduction, the surprising power of habits and how it's the small things that really make the difference. It's like getting 1% better. Number 2 is how your habits shape your identity. So being focused on identity. And number 3 is like how to build better habits in 4 simple steps. And that's a cue, craving, response, and reward. There we go. So which of those spoke loudest to you so far? Okay, we're going to go through probably 1, maybe 2 more chapters. Okay, number 4 is the man who didn't look right. Okay, so definitely another story for you to read, but this is the takeaway that I got from this chapter. And this is one of the most surprising insights about our habits. You don't need to be aware of the cue for a habit to begin. You can notice an opportunity and take action without dedicating conscious attention to this. This is what makes habits useful. It's also what makes them dangerous. As habits form, your actions come under the direction of your automatic, and he calls it non-conscious, but your subconscious mind. You fall into old patterns before you realize what's happening. Unless someone points it out, you may not even notice that you cover your mouth with your hand whenever you laugh, that you apologize before asking a question, or that you have a habit of finishing other people's sandwiches. Habit of finishing other people's sentences. And the more you repeat these patterns, the less likely you are to question what you're doing and why you're doing it. And so it's both a positive thing, but it's also a negative thing. You don't even realize you're doing that habit if it's like leading you in the wrong direction. And also you don't realize that you're doing it if it's leading you in the right direction. But I'm hoping that a lot of us want to be led in the right direction without us knowing about it, right? He says, before we can effectively build new habits, we need to get a handle on our current ones. This can be more challenging than it sounds because once a habit is firmly rooted in your life, it is more unconscious and automatic. If a habit remains mindless, you can't expect to improve it. As the psychologist Carl Jung says, by the way, favorite quote of all time, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will rule your life, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. And what's crazy is that first piece is to make it conscious, is like, what are some of the habits that you're performing that are on autopilot that you don't even know exist? Some of these even happen with like our relationships. Maybe we rush to anger. Maybe we like automatically think that we have somebody's solution, or maybe we start giving people our opinion instead of like just waiting and like listening and seeing it from their perspective, or we jump to conclusions. Or something happens with our kids and we immediately react, right? It's things like that are habits that just happen automatically. And instead, we've got to become more aware of like, oh man, what was that I did? And what's actually the cue that actually set me up? And the craving that I had in order to want to voice myself in that manner. You can just become a conscious observer of it, and you can change the way that you take action next time. He says, one of our greatest challenges in changing habits is maintaining awareness of what we are actually doing. This helps explain why the consequences of bad habits can sneak up on us. We need a point and call system for our personal lives. That's the origins of the habit scoreboard, which is a simple exercise you can use to become more aware of your behavior. To create your own, make a list of your daily habits. So what he says is to become aware of the habits that you want to change, think about the list of the habits that you have right now. You do this, and then this, and then this, and then this. A lot of times it's in a habit stack, which is something that he teaches a little bit later. It's like you do this first, you do this second, then you do this third, and you do this fourth. And actually looking at that and seeing, are those the habits that I want to perform versus are those the ones that I don't want to do, is a complete game changer because it can give you that awareness to change. Tiffany says I had to tap the live button in to bring the video live. Oh, it's weird. I wonder why it didn't happen. Michelle says we can control our habits if we bring them from the subconscious to the conscious mind, where we can reframe them. 100% we can. 100% we can. It's not as simple as doing it once, but like as we do it over time, it definitely can change the direction of our habits, right? And then sometimes, I want to call out to this, like sometimes like I've had a habit that like I would say like destroyed for a certain period of time, and then it comes back. And then something else happens, some type of cue or something comes up where like it makes me tap into that thing and that habit that I didn't want to perform anymore. And I'm not here to like beat myself up or anything like that. It's about like being able to see, oh, that came back up. Let me change this science experiment a little bit instead of making it mean something about me, right? Okay, let's get into the last chapter we're going to talk about today. 5, the best way to start a new habit. He says, let's see. These are 2 different groups of people. He says, during the week, they had 3 different groups of people. The first group was the control group. They were asked to track how often they exercise. The second group was the motivation group. They were asked not only to track their workouts, but they were provided some material for the benefits of exercise. The third group did all that stuff, but they actually had to do they had to speak the following sentence every single day. And that is like, during the next week, I will partake in at least 20 minutes of vigorous exercise on, and then it has a day, at, and a time, in, and then whatever that place is. He said in the first 2 selected groups, 35 to 38% of people exercise at least once per week. He says, interesting, the motivations presentation given to the second group seemed to have no meaningful impact on their behavior. Crazy, right? And we always typically go to like, I need more motivation, but he found that it didn't matter. But 91% of the third group exercised at least once per week, more than double of what the other people did. He says the sentence they filled out is what researchers refer to as an implementation intention, which is a plan you make beforehand when and where you act. That is how you intend to implement a particular habit. So I love this because this is something that I've learned through the process of life coaching, life and performance coaching. And that is like when I have a client that I'm coaching through something, and I help coach them through something, whether it's something in their personal life connected to their family or something even related to like making more sales or whatever it is in their business. I always ask them at the end, okay, based off of what you learned, like what's the biggest thing that you learned today? Now, what is something that we can do next week? And you can check in with me to make sure that to take the action based off of what you learned this week. And so what people do is they'll think about this and they'll now literally tell me, okay, so on Friday, I will reach out to that person that you asked me to, and I will have that conversation with them, and I will be thinking about it in terms of the description that you gave me, and then I will check up with you on Saturday. And what's crazy is like that's not for me. I don't ask that because I'm like watching over you, like hovering over, like making sure you're going to do that. That's not the purpose of a coach. I want to empower you. But I also know that when you use your words and say, this is when I'm going to do it, this is what I learned, and this is how I'm going to implement it moving forward, and this is when I'm going to check in with you, that's you saying it, which is what gets you to take action. Now, what's crazy is that part can kind of be like uncomfortable, right? I know a lot of people who were working with me one-on-one, they were seeing massive success and they stopped working with me and they didn't have that implementation idea, right? They didn't have that, not only learning new skills and developing new ways of thinking of things, but also they didn't sit down and tell somebody like, okay, here's what I learned, here's what I'm going to do, and here's when I'm going to check in with you. And when you have those things, it like gets you to show up, even though it feels uncomfortable, you get yourself to take massive action. And so I've had people come back to me and go, I want to work with you again. And I'm like, absolutely. And a lot of it has to do with this whole idea of like implementation. Like, how can you set yourself up for success and really solve the problem in advance? Like, how can I make a stake in the ground? This is when I'm going to do it. This is the action that I'm going to take. And this is when I'm going to follow up with you. It is truly a game changer. And it's uncomfortable. It still is uncomfortable for me too. So my mentor, Josh, I will do this too, where I'm like, okay, he didn't ask me, but I know how powerful it is when I create a plan. I actually literally just did this the other day. I went through I have a YouTube coach now because I really believe like in modeling the behavior. And like, if I talk about coaching, like I need to make sure that I get coaching too. And it's always the first thing that I do is I'm like, okay, I want to excel in this. How do I find somebody that's going to help give me the advice and direction that I need, right? So I have a YouTube coach and he's like giving me all of these different steps. And at the end, I on purpose give him an implementation like sentence from me so that I know that I'm going to show up. Because I could just be like, hey, that was a great call. Thank you so much for that. I'll see you next time. But instead I'm like, okay, so here's what I got from the call. I'm going to focus on the packaging of my videos. I'm going to focus on the thumbnails, and I'm going to focus on the sharing more stories and more like connection pieces. And I'm like, these are the things, and this is what I'm going to check in with. I'm going to check in with my team on this day. And he was like, yeah, that's awesome. That sounds like perfect, right? But it wasn't necessarily for him. It was for me, because I knew that if I wanted to actually show up and to take action on that, I have to give myself something like that. And it was crazy because I read this, I think the next day, either the next day or the day before. And I was like, yes, this is literally what I try and do. It makes me feel uncomfortable when I say it out loud. But when I do it, like, it gets me to take those actions that I want to take and not take the actions that I don't want to take. And it's a game changer when you can do that, right? So having some type of implementation of when you're going to do it, where you're going to do it, what time you're going to do it, and if you have a coach, when you're going to follow up with that person and tell them about it, right? I love that last one. That social cost is a game changer when you get other people involved, not just any random person, right? I'm probably not going to get my mom involved because she lets me off the hook too much. She thinks that I do too much, and I work too much, and I do this too much, and I work out too much, and all this good stuff with the 75 Hard. But I'm going to find somebody who has very similar goals, but also values as mine, who's willing to push me a little bit and not let me give in on the times that I want to give in. And by doing that, it just creates this entirely different level of getting me to show up on a different level. It's different. It's also different than an accountability partner. I know sometimes people think they're accountability partner, which is great. It's great to have an accountability partner, but you also have to have somebody you can reach up to, sort of like as a mentor, to be able to push you to dig a little bit deeper and not let you off the hook. Sometimes our friends are like that. They're like, no, it's okay. Like, you did okay. You did. But they're not there to like push you per se as a mentor would. So that's why I always find that next level mentor for me. But also I make sure that I use this where I'm setting up the implementation of what I'm going to do and how I'm going to check in with them. And plus they love that. I got to say, as a coach, when somebody says that, they're like, this is what I learned from this. This is how, when and where I'm going to implement it. And this is when I'm going to check in with you. I'm like, oh yes, please. I love working with you. You're like the best clients in the world when you find somebody who does that, right? So it's not only something that you could do for yourself, but also if you're a coach, if you're leading people, actually ask them to give you an implementation statement. And that way they will be more likely to take action. And it's not necessarily you holding them to it. It's them holding themselves to it. Okay. Now, there is this habit stacking formula. I want to go over this real quick before we leave. I know Julie said something about this. Habit stacking has been very helpful with the 75 Hard. Yes, it has, Julie. What habit stacking is typically when we have habits, we do them one after the other, right? So when you close your eyes and you think about, okay, when I wake up, what do I do? Okay, I get out of bed, I walk over, use the bathroom, I wash my hands, I get my water, I go grab my phone, I go grab my puppy, I take him out to the restroom. So I have like these things that I do. They're called habit stacking. It's usually like one after the other, after the other, after the other, after the other. And when you're trying to learn a new habit, one of the ways that he says is a great way is when you're doing it, implement a new habit in between there. Because when you're habit stacking, it just happens automatically. You do this thing and then you move on to the next and you move on to the next. And if you want to add something in there, it helps you to stay more consistent because the other habits you do automatic on autopilot. You don't have to think about it. But when you get to this certain point, maybe you maybe you want to floss your teeth in the morning. So instead of leaving the floss in the drawer, you take the floss out and you put it on the counter, right? And you're like, okay, after I wake up and I use the bathroom and I wash my hands, I floss my teeth. Because now it's a visual cue of like, oh, this is what I have to do. And now it becomes a normal habit because it's in your stack. Now it's like built in there, as opposed to just saying, hey, on Thursdays at 2:00, I'm going to do this thing. And it's just being a habit all by itself. It's a little bit more harder to implement rather than when you have habit stacking. He said the habit stacking formula is after this habit, I will do this new habit. And thinking about it in terms of like the steps. And of course, I'm going to fast forward a little bit. Like, how do you make it visible so that you can do more of it? Now, Julie says something about the 75 Hard. We do have a team that's going through the 75 Hard right now. And one of the biggest things is if you're somebody who wants to make sure you drink enough water, make it visible. Make it visible. Like, literally, this whole idea of water drinking was my nemesis for a while until I actually read this book. Actually, I don't think it's when I read this book. I actually got to see James Clear live. He's like my buddy. I mean, he doesn't have any hair like me. That's the only reason why he's my buddy. But like when he was having a conversation and he was teaching instead of this really small, intimate group of leaders that I was a part of long time ago, he talked about like making things in your environment visible. And one of the things he said is like, if you want to drink more water, have cups of water hanging around. Have your bottle be visible to you. And I remember at the time I was a police sergeant and I was in my police car and I'm like, where do I put my water so that it's more visible to me so I drink more of it? And it was a game changer because now I had it more in a visible place where every time I saw it, I'd be like, oh, time to drink water. And then I would drink it. And my cue was seeing my water bottle. And so it made it so much easier for me to do that, right? And so that whole idea of making it visible is something we're going to hit on a little bit on our next call, which is going to be, let me actually double check because I don't think it is the first week of January because we're out of town. It's going to be on the 11th. So the next call is going to be on the 11th, guys, of January, where we're going to dive into chapter number 6, which is motivation is overrated. Environment often matters more. But like I said, if you are not signed up for the book club or you're not signed up for that goal setting session, we're doing that on the 30th. It's for free. You just have to sign up for the book club and you can go to the events inside of our app and you'll be able to be invited to it. And it is going to be a game changer. That being said, based off of what you heard today, guys, what is your biggest takeaway and how are you going to implement it moving forward? Now, as I say that out loud, do you see what I just did there? Like literally, this is something you're going to hear me doing on every single call that I do. And I don't even realize it consciously, but I do want to hear. I want you to post up here. Super easy to just say, oh, okay, I'll think about it in my head. But when you put it out into the world, it is a game changer, especially for Laura and Michelle, current people that I actually am working with in a 1-on-3, a success pod capacity. I know that when you post up here that I'm going to be checking in on you, not only in Marco Polo, but also on our calls, right? But for everybody else, the same thing. Tiffany, Julie, what are your biggest takeaways from today's call and how is it that you're going to implement it into your life moving forward? So I want to hear that before we end the call. And let me see if there's anything else. No. I want to hear, what is it that was your biggest takeaway from today and how are you going to implement it into your day? Tiffany says, it's been very helpful for me to stop and look at why that habit is resurfaced if I thought I changed it and dig deeper behind the motives driving the craving. Yes, Tiffany. Yes. So, I mean, that is a huge takeaway of like, I saw myself take this action. What was it that got me to take this action, which is an action that I don't want to take? Tiffany knows this because she's one of our certified life coaches. And that is like, when you start thinking of this as a science experiment rather than, I did it again. I did it again. Like, I'm such an idiot. Like, why I'm never going to be able to have success. By the way, this is the nasty mark that comes out and talks to myself every once in a while. You see, you did it again. You're not like what you're saying you are. And like all of these like really negative things and negative thoughts kind of like come to my mind because I'm making it mean something about me. What if it was just a habit you took or an action you took because of a habit that you have developed when you were younger and you had no idea about it, right? And so taking it from the perspective of this means something about you to like, I wonder why it is that I did that, gets you in a curiosity mode and it helps you see things from the perspective of a scientist versus the perspective of somebody who's shaming or guilting yourself. So I love that. Laura says, yeah, I definitely am working on doing that, Michelle. What did Michelle say? Oh, yeah, we can control our habits if we can bring them from the subconscious to the conscious. 100%, 100%. Okay, Tiffany says, giving implementation feedback is the next thing I'm implementing. I'm not certified yet. I want to be. Okay, you will be soon. I'm sure you will be soon. Okay. So giving implementation feedback is the next thing I'm implementing. Wow, we have 2 Tiffany's here today. That's why. Okay, giving implementation feedback is the next thing that I'm implementing. I'm not certified yet. Okay, so by the way, Tiffany, you are really great at communicating, at the way you have like forming ideas, and the things that you're like sharing inside of the app are game changing. Thank you for doing that. I really appreciate you for that. You have this just very great knack of being able to communicate in a simple form, but also like make it so insightful. I appreciate that for sure, for sure, for sure. And Julie, I want to hear from you too. Julie, what is something that you heard today that you're going to be able to implement moving forward? I know she already said habit stacking has been very helpful for the 75 hard. And I also love to hear, Julie, like what part of habit stacking has been the most helpful for the 75 hard? Is it getting things out of the day early? Is getting things out of the day in a row? Love to hear what you got. And Laura, if you're still on, love to hear as well. But guys, I appreciate you for always being willing to lead from the front. I know we talk about this a lot, but when it comes to like leading, when it comes to making an impact in people's lives, like doing so without feeling like you have to sacrifice the other important areas of your life, like your health or your family, in order to get ahead in business, because that is not the truth. Being able to lean in, being able to have those difficult conversations, continuing to grow, continuing to read books like this and implement these things is exactly what the world and your family needs more than ever. I appreciate you for meeting me halfway on that, for not only coming here, but also implementing this into your lives. I appreciate you so much. If there's anything that we could do, don't hesitate to reach out. Definitely subscribe if you're not subscribed, and join our book club. We'd love to have you. All right, everybody. You guys have an incredible weekend, incredible holiday, by the way, and we'll see some of you guys this Saturday. All right, bye, everybody.